everybody, and welcome back to, I believe, the 129th episode of the Triboro Podcast. We forget to check, but we roll with it. I'm your host, Justin Alonso, joined by Nicholas O'Brien. How are we doing, Nicholas O'Brien?
I'm doing better. I think this stage is a grief for coursing.
You need
So
one of those things that, companies have that, this many days since an accident, this many
yeah,
days since the Mets have moved on from a beloved franchise player.
yeah, exactly. So it's been what, six? What's today? Tuesday?
Yeah.
7 days. It's been 7 days. Well, no, six. It's been six. It's been six
Mm-hmm.
or seven.
Anyways, actually have some stuff to talk about for the Yankees this time. Some very much so conflicting reports, a small signing that I think people are freaking out about when they shouldn't be. Anyways, if you had nothing else, might as well run straight into it. Right into the Bronx.
Now entering the Bronx.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back into the Bronx, where the Yankees have actually made a move. Yay! Bringing back Amed Rosario on a 1 year, $2.5 million contract. The way that they see him is kind of like that very poor man's utility player, in the sense of he'll play a little bit of second, he'll play a little bit of third. Jack Curry even mentioned him on Hot Stove was playing a little bit of first. So
That's a
God knows
choice.
what'd you say?
The choice. I don't think he's ever played first before,
Well,
but
I get the idea to spell Rice against the tough
Mhm.
lefty. I get the idea because that's what Rosario's pretty much going to be doing. He's going to be playing again at third base against tough lefties. Maybe even give Dominguez a day off in the outfield because he can play. He can stand there in the outfield. Not a good outfielder, but
he can certainly stand in the
he can
outfield.
certainly stand there in the outfield. And
That is
Dominguez,
something he can do.
and if Dominguez doesn't make the strides I think we all hope for, is he really that much worse in the outfield if you need it every couple of days for a spot start every here and there?
That's
So,
probably yeah.
but I like it. It's one of those moves where it's just good. Like you
Yeah.
had to do a move like that. People are freaking out like, oh, they're saying Amed Rosario instead of it's like, so you don't want them to sign a player for cheap that improves the roster?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like people are
It's
just
dumb.
freaking out about it just to freak out about. Like, I will say it again. None of the Yankees' main targets have gone off the board yet. I mean, the only
Yeah.
one you could say was Kim, and even then, I don't think he was a main target for them. I think that was kind of just a thing for me. For those that didn't see, Hassan Kim signed a 1 year, $20 million deal with the Braves, which also, like, holy shit, that's a lot of money. Um, that being said, I still would have done it. But that makes the Grisham deal look a tad bit better in comparison
Yeah,
to that.
honestly, I do think the Grisham deal looks a hell of a lot better with a lot of the deals that have been coming out.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, yeah, it's if anything, it's basically around what he probably would have gotten.
I was gonna say, which then begs the question: why did he accept the qualifying offer?
Right. Maybe his market just didn't. There wasn't much. 'Cause, I mean, he's also put in a bad position because it's such a short window
Yeah,
between getting offered it and then having to accept. So maybe there just wasn't enough time for his market to develop as he would have liked.
that's fair.
But yeah, again, I think it looks fine now.
Yeah, and of course you do have the draft pick compensation that comes with qualifying offer. We'll get into that kind of in a minute. But just sitting on Rosario, like, you needed this guy. The entire offseason, the Yankees were talking about how they were too left-handed, too left-handed, too left-handed. You needed that guy that would just kind of spell them. And if I'll kind of talk about obviously like Cody Bellinger later, but if they don't sign a Cody Bellinger and they say, all right, we think Dominguez and Spencer Jones, the future's here, but then they sound like an Austin Hayes to be a right-handed guy, hell yeah. So if they want to
Mm,
do the platoon route and they're gonna go full way that way and then spend that money on pitching, I'm okay with that.
yeah. No, I think that makes a ton of sense, especially with how currently the roster is. I think you can use an Austin Hayes type guy. Because I also don't think you really want Jorbit Vivas to actually be
You
on the
don't want him on this
bench.
roster.
Yeah, so I do think you do need to get rid of that spot somehow, and a righty probably makes a ton of sense for another righty makes a ton of sense for this team.
Yeah. And then a couple of quick things just about because there was a hot stove last night that Jack Curry said. He said that the Yankees made an offer apparently to Bellinger yesterday. Or he said yesterday they made an offer the day before. So 2 days ago, the Yankees made an offer for him. Obviously, that's kind of one of those things. They're going to be exchanging offers back and forth. It's weird the way he's talking about it.
Mhm.
Because this is the least confident I've heard Curry speak in an offseason in a while. If that
Yeah,
makes any sense. We're like, it's a lot more like he almost doesn't know what's going on. And I don't know if that's just me coping. Because he also did mention the Yankees are a lot more likely to add a starter through trade than free agency. Which I would disagree with. Or I would disagree with them doing it. Let me word it that way. To an extent. Because outside of Sandy and Peralta, I don't really care for any of the other pitchers at that tier below. Because obviously you have like Scooble, and obviously it's not gonna happen. But Paul Skeens, you have like those guys that like their names are being linked, but they're not gonna go after guys like that. So outside of Peralta, and even you could even poke a lot of holes in the argument for Sandy. I'll give credit to Edward, to Cabrera, just because that could be something there.
yeah.
I don't really like the trade market for starters outside of that.
No
And
interest in Gore.
yeah, Gore. I mean, I completely forgot. I really do
Okay.
like Gore.
Yeah.
Because he also is. I can't remember if I talked about, but he is literally Carlos Rodon, a couple years younger.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like those guys, but I also just feel like you've heard so much about Michael King recently with the Yankees. For those that didn't see the report, it seems that Michael King is down to the Yankees, Orioles, and Red Sox. I could guarantee you this: I don't know which one. At least one of those teams is being used for leverage.
Yeah.
I want to say the Orioles are, just because Yankees, obviously he was the Yankee, his family there. Boston, he grew up in kind of like that whole area, went to college there, has a
New
lot of
England
family there,
area.
New England area. So I think the Yankees Red Sox make the most sense.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, but the Red Sox have like so much pitching. It's like, yeah, but Michael King would be there too. Like I think he just
Yeah.
immediately slots right into that. And there's already been talks about them trading an Abreu, a Duran. You package that with the starter, you could get something really damn good.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
I am very much so concerned about the Red Sox getting him. I do not want that. I really do think the Orioles are kind of being used as a leverage play.
Hmm.
That being said, the thing that does, because obviously you do have the injury concern with King. That's the number one concern. It's the
Yeah.
injuries. Can he pitch? Because if he pitches, you're getting like a 3.5 to 3.3 pitcher, a guy that's gonna strike out a bunch of guys, miss a lot of bats. So you absolutely love that. The other thing too is he does have the qualifying offer attached, so you would have to give up your second and fifth highest draft pick, and I don't know if the Yankees would want to do that because realistically, let's look at it this way: King and Mi are the two guys that I'm looking for the Yankees for the starting market right now. King has draft pick compensation, and Mi does not have the draft pick attached to him, and then obviously the other guys that you'd get through the trade market, they don't have that attached to him. So that kind of makes me think that the Yankees aren't going after King because say
Hmm.
what you want about the draft picks, you also lose $1 million in international signing money, and you get like 5 or 6 million. So that's a
Yeah.
decent chunk of change that you're losing. Obviously, Trent Grisham accepting the qualifying offer. It's not like it's not like last offseason. We're like, yeah, we lost Soto, we lost that money, or we lost Soto and we signed Max Fried and we give it up to the Braves, but we also get it back from Soto. It's not like that. You aren't
Yeah.
getting that back. So I think they're not gonna go like. I think that's gonna be kind of one of those things of why they wouldn't, kind of the tiebreaker for lack of a better
Yeah.
term, why they wouldn't go
I
after
th-
King, but.
I think that's fair. I think the only reality where I can see them signing a qualifying offer type pitcher is if they really feel like Bellinger's not coming back.
Yeah.
Because then it kind of offsets a little. Not a ton, but you'll get the draft pick back from Bellinger, lose it with
Bellinger didn't
a
get a.
Michael King.
He
I
didn't
thought I
get
did.
one. He got one last year.
I lied. So never mind.
Yeah, Bellinger got one last year, so you can't
I
get it
could have
2 years
sworn
in
I
a
did.
row. No.
Oh, shit. All right, well,
Yeah.
never mind.
Um. No, I was shocked when I saw it too that he couldn't get it because I thought it was like
Yeah.
one of those things like just a walk formality, all that. But and even then, like I have no idea what to think of for this Bellinger market. It is so weird. ESPN recently dropped an article where they had him getting, I think it was, I just closed it. I think it was 6,180. Yeah, they had him projected 6,180. Kyle Tucker at 11,418. I think both those are way too high.
Yeah.
I think the years is probably all right for Bellinger. I think 6 is kind of 5 or 6. No, but I'm saying what he's actually gonna
Yeah.
get. I think
No,
5 or 6 is kind of what's
I
gonna
think
actually
that's fair.
happen.
Yeah.
Um, and I will mention it because people are gonna talk about it. They have Bo Bichette projected at 5 years, 150. I just don't see the fit. I just really don't.
Yeah. No, unless you trade
I
Jazz,
was just
which
about to say the Jeff Passan again said that teams are calling on Jazz. So that's kind of like a drumbeat type thing that you're hearing that 2 Passan articles in a row that teams are calling about Jazz. That doesn't mean the Yankees are going to trade him. That just means that the phone's ringing about him.
yeah.
So I don't know what happens there. If you trade Jazz, get it, sure. Still don't think that's the right move to do, but because I'd much rather have Jazz for that 1 year because I think he's just
Yeah.
a better player than Bichette, and I just
And truly, what do you think you're gonna get back for 1 year of Jazz Chisholm?
yeah. Because let's play this game. The teams that you would trade Jazz to, like the only team that would want him would be a team that's in a competitive window right now. So
Like
take out the Marlins. Go on.
it's gonna sound maybe the value probably doesn't line up, but would you do like Jazz for David Peterson straight up?
No,
Right. Like I feel like that's like
I
the
don't think
only
the
type
Mets
of
would do
things you're
that
gonna get.
either.
I don't know, maybe
Um,
Sigma center field or something, but like
no,
I feel like that's the only type of value you're gonna get back, like a rental for a rental. Like I don't
yeah.
think you're moving contracts with Jazz Chisholm. I don't think you're getting multiple years of control with Jazz Chisholm. I feel like it's gonna be a rental for a rental.
I was
Need
gonna
for need.
I was gonna go a decent tick higher and
Okay.
say if they throw in a lot more, Scooble.
Yeah. Right.
So that's kind of what I
Sure.
like the only guy that I can really think about because obviously you're not going to do a Marlins team, so that takes out Sandy and Cabrera. Cardinals aren't going to do it, so that takes out Donovan, Romero, anyone else on that team. Don't really see a team that would be willing to do that. So
Yeah. Mariners. I don't. Would Jazz Chisholm and plus get you a Bryce Miller? Probably not, but you
there's
know what I
only
mean.
one player on that Mariners pitching staff that I would want, and it's not going to happen. And
Yeah, he's not
everyone that
going there.
knows me knows that I am one of the biggest Brian Wu fans on the planet.
Woo.
If
Yeah.
it was for Brian Wu,
Yeah, everything's on the table.
I close my eyes and say yes, but because I love Brian Wu for years. You back to like freshman year, how much I've talked about Brian Wu,
No,
just
I
how much I
know.
love this stuff, but that's not gonna happen. Yeah, I really the King market I think is really what's gonna set a lot of their plans, because if you're paying that much for Michael King and you're giving up the draft picks, all that, I could see them going a youth movement in the outfield. And honestly, I don't even hate that. I really like. I would obviously love Bellinger. I would love Tucker, but I think that the starting pitching is a much bigger need than people think. And I've said it once, and I'll say it again. It does not matter how many starters you sign. Half of them are going to be injured, and you're going to have to trade for another one at the deadline. That's just the sad reality of pitching. It
Yeah,
truly just is. And who's to say that you sign so many? Luis Hill is either a trade option or gets moved to the bullpen, and Luis Hill doesn't come a beast in the bullpen.
right.
You know what I mean? So,
Which I think makes a ton of sense. If I'm
and
being
you also
honest.
have to realize too, a lot of these guys logged career highs in innings too this
Yeah.
year. I know Max Fried did. I believe Rodon did. I know Cam Schlittler did, and there was another guy that did too, and it's gonna drive me crazy. But you had 3 or 4 guys in this rotation that logged career highs in innings. So you're
Yeah.
gonna need to spell a lot of these guys. You don't know what you're getting in. You don't know when Carlos Rodon and Garrett Cole are coming back. Clark Schmidt is maybe, if you're lucky, August, September. So I again, it's so corny, but it is so true. You could just never truly have enough pitching. And you look at the
Nope.
Yankees playoffs the last couple of years, yeah, the offense has been inconsistent, but they've just not had pitching. Their pitching has just failed them time in, time again. So they need that so badly. Getting
Breathe.
into what was it?
Breathe.
The other starter, obviously, that I mentioned a lot is Amai. He has still, it's either January 2nd or January 6th. I want to say it was January 2nd is
Yeah,
the
it's
deadline.
it's like between those days.
One of those days, whatever. He has like 2-3 weeks left to sign. He's gonna start doing meetings next week, so we'll see how that goes. You've seen a lot of reports saying like, no, the Yankees are very much in on him. You've seen a lot of like the anonymous spokesperson with the Yankees
Yeah.
said, oh, they're doing everything they can to get him. But then you have Curry saying like, oh, they're probably gonna trade for a starter. I don't know which way they're gonna go. That's definitely something to kind of keep a finger on the pulse of doing
Yeah.
it, because if you add Amai to this rotation, holy shit. But just because I mentioned Amai and we did mention Okamoto last episode, it seems like Okamoto's off the table now with Rosario. Just because why bring Rosario if you seriously
Yeah.
think you're getting Okamoto? Wasn't really that realistic in the first place. Last bit on kind of just like the international players. Murakami has less than a week.
Yeah.
Uh,
Monday by 5 p.m. he needs to sign, and we've heard nothing.
Honest question: is there a chance he just goes back to Japan?
I think it grows by the day.
I also think that would be a mistake for him.
I also agree. I do think we've kind of overcorrected. First it was like, oh my god, look at this, he's gonna be so good. To like, oh my god, this guy fucking sucks.
If the Yankees didn't have McMahon's contract, I would think they should be all over him as a 1-year prove-it deal.
I think that's fair.
Because the thing with him is, what can he prove in Japan?
Nothing.
You know what I mean? Like that's
well, I think the contact rates and the strikeout stuff just improve on that.
I still think it's a thing of but even if you get worse results here, but you improve those slightly more than what you would, or like a slight amount more, and you could have done more in Japan, I still feel like teams would like that a lot more.
Yeah, I agree. Fangraphs has their projections out on him for Steamer. So at 26 years old, he is projected for a 112 WRC plus with 24 home runs.
Yeah.
330 on base, basically 340 slug, like a 767, 770 OPS.
And I'll even say this too,
That's
like
fine.
I am not comparing the two. I am not. Ohtani had a much bigger strikeout problem in Japan. Obviously,
yes, that's been going around now.
What'd you say?
I said that's been making its rounds.
Obviously, Ohtani was younger. Ohtani is... Because it's a thing of, like, Spencer Jones and Aaron Judge, where you can say, like, Aaron Judge also had the hole in his swing, and Spencer Jones does too. Who's to say he can't fix it? Yeah. But it's also Aaron fucking Judge. It's Shohei fucking Ohtani. You know what I mean? Where it's a thing of these guys are unicorns. They're so just out of this world that... It's almost like the Josh Allen thing in football, where it's like, oh, look at Josh Allen, look at the improvement. Yeah, but he is the exception of the rule. He is not the rule. So, that being said, I would love to have Murakami on a prove-it deal, a 1-year deal. I think that's something that would be, I think it'd be a great fit for the Mets, personally.
Yeah. I think he does make a ton of sense. I'm not sure if they want to take that chance of him, kind of with the bottom falling out. I think the floor is too low for him, for them to take a shot.
Yeah.
But
which on a 1-year deal, I wouldn't care, but that's neither here nor there. Then getting on to kind of the big in quotes article that came out this morning about Luke Weaver, about how the Yankees have quote unquote genuine interest in bringing him back. He's also interested in bringing him back. I didn't really talk about him much because there was a lot of thing like, oh, he wants to be a starter, wants to be a starter, wants to be a starter. Apparently, there's 10 teams that are in on Luke Weaver. Not a single one of them wants him to be a starter.
Yeah.
So if we're talking purely as a reliever, hell yeah, I'm back in. I'm 100% back in on bringing back Luke Weaver. And I think, because look at the hamstring injury. I pointed to this a lot throughout the year. Before the hamstring injury, 2.65 FIP. After 4.42. because then he also had issues with tipping pitches, his mechanics were off. Gee, maybe it's because he had a strained hamstring, and hamstrings are absolutely notorious for just lingering and just being there for a while. So you look at that, and my counterpoint too, or not counterpoint, but one of my pitches to Luke Weaver too is if you don't sign another starter, why can't the Yankees offer him that in the beginning of the year? At least a shot at a competition.
Yeah.
Because are you really saying that guaranteed locked and loaded Ryan Yarbrough is your 5-starter going into the year? If you have to tell Luke Weaver, we can't offer you a guaranteed starting role, but we will have an honest competition between you and Ryan Yarbrough for that 5th spot to get a deal done. I mean, I think that's fair.
Yeah. I guess. I think it's just more of like the build up.
Yeah, which is definitely fair.
Yeah.
But I would rather him build up to then build down. You know what I mean? Than the other way around.
Yeah. No, it's definitely easier to do that.
So, and again, it's obviously not a perfect solution, but I think it works for both sides if the Yankees don't sign a starter. To say Luke Weaver, look, we want you back. Probably going to go back into the bullpen at one point. We'll sign you to a 1-year deal. You'll have a chance to fight for a starting job in the beginning of the year. That way you could put that out for teams to show, hey, I could be a starter. Look at what I did last year. I improved it. I did this, that, whatever. So I think that makes a lot of sense, especially until like Garrett Cole comes back, Carlos Rodon comes back, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Because also this bullpen, they have good pieces as of right now. It's a lot more that kind of just has to be added to it right now. Because right now you have David Bednar, Camilo Doval, Fernando Cruz, Tim Hill, and then maybe Brent Hedrick, who the Yankees have talked a lot about this offseason. Maybe Jake Bird if he wants to be alive. So they still could benefit from another couple of guys in that bullpen. And bullpen's one of those positions where you could sign 5 guys in free agency and still need to trade for 3 at the deadline.
Yep.
What is it that you always say? The idea of a super pen is better.
Oh yeah.
What is it?
The only thing that can beat the idea or like the theory of a Super Bowl pen is the execution of a Super Bowl pen.
Yeah, it's so hard to actually have one. So I'm all in on that. Get as many guys as you can, and also I truly think it was just a hamstring that screwed over Luke Weaver, because that then goes to the mechanics, that then goes to the tip pitching. It makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at the numbers before and after the injury. And keep in mind, it was like a 6 to 8 week injury timeline they gave him, and he came back in like 3 or 4 weeks. Right. So he was way ahead of schedule. It's probably one of those things like, I'm ready. Meanwhile, his hamstring is just hanging off the bone.
Yeah. Put me in, coach.
Exactly. So we'll see kind of where everything goes with that. Definitely keep an eye out for Luke Weaver, the starting market. And I think, when do you think, because a lot of people have been kind of reiterating the fact that they don't think Bellinger signs until after Tucker, before or after Christmas for Tucker?
I think it's good. At this rate, I think it's going to be after, because I feel like once this week is over, I feel like it's really going to be stagnant because of the holidays.
Before or after New Year's? Going on.
I think it's after New Year's.
After New Year's?
I think we're, for more of the major free agents, I think we're looking post December 31st, because again, after this week, things usually stall because of the holidays, and that week between Christmas and New Year's is always kind of like a weird limbo state.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, I just feel like they'll pick up after New Year's.
Yeah, which is
my opinion.
Fair. And the thing that I've liked about the Yankees so far is that they haven't just been like, oh, we're waiting on them. Right. You know what I mean? Like, they're actually like still trying to do other moves. They're actually, because I'll say it again for everyone freaking out, the big guys that the Yankees have been linked to, who are going after, are still on the board. If Tucker and Bellinger were gone, if Amaya and King were gone, Freddie Peralta got traded to insert team that you hate, then yeah, I'd be freaking out. But there's no reason to sound the alarms yet. It's a slow play, and I hate to say it, I hate to be that guy, The Yankees always get someone in free agency. You look at the last couple of years, it always happens. Maybe an annoying process, may not be a pretty process, but neither is the entirety of MLB free agency. It's such a shit show, and I'm very curious to see if that gets tweaked at all in the CBA. I don't think it will, because either way, you're giving one side a significant unfair advantage. But
Yeah.
for my sake, I wish it was.
Yeah. I think I forgot what I was listening to a podcast. It might have been Rates and Barrels with
Mhm.
Eno Saris. They were talking about maybe doing another trade deadline in the off instead of a free agent deadline, do a trade deadline in the off season. That could be interesting. I feel like that, that puts less pressure, or that puts no pressure on free agents. But I do think it might work.
I saw that kind of. From what I saw, a lot of people were saying that agents were proposing the idea. Like, no shit, you're proposing that idea.
Yeah.
Because that gives your guys so much more leverage. I think the owners would never sign off on that.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's my only thing. I think it would be good for the sport. I just don't think the owners would ever sign off on that.
Yeah.
So
Maybe.
that's all I had. Now we have a much more in-depth off-season V2 preview for the
Yes.
Mets.
Over on in Queens.
Now entering Queens.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Queens and the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're going to go over the new Mets offseason. I mentioned it last episode, but obviously a lot of things have changed that have fundamentally changed how the Mets need to go about this offseason. So we figured it might be a good run to kind of see where they can go from here, because this roster needs a ton of work. But we're here to help you.
And
or
even in
help you
between
understand what they
then
can do.
and now, more moves have happened that make it even more complicated.
Yes. Thank you for the segue, Justin. Mets signing Jorge Polanco over the weekend on a 2-year, $40 million deal. $20 million a year, straight up. No deferrals, no options, no opt-outs, nothing like that. He is expected to play first base and DH. The only thing, he's never played first base. Ever.
No, he did.
He stood there for an inning and was not involved with any. No, not even an inning. He stood there
Was
for
it?
an out
Yeah.
and was not involved in the play at all. So, certainly a choice, but we'll talk about the more of the roster fit after we talk about the player himself. So, Jorge Polanco, 32 years old, spent the last year with Seattle, had probably one of the best, if not the best, offensive year of his career. An 821 OPS, a 132 WRC plus, 26 home runs, a career low 15% strikeout rate. He cut his strikeout rate basically in half from 24 going into 25. He's a switch hitter with pulled fly ball power. He got super aggressive last year in 2025.
Before you say that, can I just talk about the strikeout rate for a minute?
Yeah, go.
Because I'm
of course.
sure you've seen this kind of going around, because this is also making its round. He had the largest year-to-year drop in strikeout rate of all time.
Ever.
From 29.2% to 15.6%. It was a 13.6% change. Second highest was 12.6. So a full percentage point better than that of the all-time leader, I guess you could say, in strikeout drop. So for Mets fans that are going to look at his 2024 and then to his 2025 saying like, oh, is this sustainable? If he keeps that strikeout rate down, hell yeah. But
even if it goes up, to like a 20%,
as long as it's not in that
this is a good
25-30.
floor.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. In 2024, he was striking out at almost
29.2.
30%. Even 23 was 25.7. So if he kind of stays in that 15 to 20 range, I think we're good. Yeah. But again, probably one of the best hitters when it comes to pulling his fly balls. He got super aggressive in the zone. His zone contact rate went up by 8% from the prior year. Uh, that paired with he closed off his stance dramatically. He was a very open hitter in the past, but in 2025 he closed up a ton. When it comes to his splits have kind of fluctuated for the most part between, righty lefty. But for his career, he has hit right-handed pitching better left-handed pitching. Last year he hit left-handed pitching better. But, I'd rather just take a look at his career numbers, and at the end of the day, he's fine against both.
Switch hitters, I don't want to say are fluky in that, but it's very year to year, I feel like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
It's also probably good to mention that when it comes to bat speed, his bat speed is a tick higher as a left-handed hitter rather than a right-handed hitter.
no.
So overall, he's probably better suited against right-handed pitching. But again, if he can hit lefties by taking Tarek Skubal deep twice in the playoffs, then take that.
The reason the Mariners made it to the CS.
Yeah, exactly. Was because of Jorge Polanco. Well, yeah, you know what? Because I also think he was the walk-off for the final, 15 inning.
He was either the
game.
run or the guy that knocked in the RBI. I forget.
Yeah. So
I'll look that
again,
up.
but additionally, postseason success. Hopefully we get there with him, and
Jorge Polanco.
it was okay. So that's the player. He's a slugger. He hits his home runs. He had a really good year last year. Switch hitter, helps balance the lineup a little more when it comes to handedness. And of course, this roster just needed another bat. They still need another bat, but Jorge Polanco definitely helps. Now, when it comes to the positional fit is where it gets very interesting and a little confusing. Again, he's never played first base, and by all reports, he is going to play first base. I hope this is more of a he can fill in at first base, and he will mostly DH, because even if we look at it last year, he played a majority of games at DH, 88 games at DH, and then another 44 on the field. So double the amount of games DHing rather than being on the field. I hope that's kind of the case for his fit for the Mets. I really don't want to see him on the field all too much. But in the same breath of Amed Rosario, how good a utility guy is if he's not really good defensively where you put him is up to debate. But he is a middle infielder by trade.
He is as much of a utility man as Amed Rosario is.
Right. Again, how valuable is that if you're a below average defender everywhere you play? Up to you. I say it's still valuable. I think having guys who can physically play
In
the
a
position
pinch,
is
yeah,
important.
definitely.
But, it's probably the floor is quite low. But again, he started out as a shortstop. Past couple years has really been a second baseman, has filled in at third. So he can kind of play all over the infield. And if they're going to make him a first baseman as well, then that's basically all four infield positions he can play in a pinch. I think this makes a ton of sense. I think it gives you Brett Beatty insurance, because as much as we like Brett Beatty, this is his coming off his one good year in the majors, and hopefully he can improve. But if he doesn't, that's still a very real possibility. I also think this is Marcus Semien insurance. Look, we know Semien is going to be an excellent defender, but there's a non-0% chance that his bat makes him unplayable, which I think is a real possibility. So again, I think this is insurance for Marcus Semien as well. So again, I like the signing. I'm just confused. It's David Stearns pound the table for run prevention, run prevention, run prevention. You don't sign Pete Alonso, and then you sign Jorge Polanco, who is a below average defender everywhere he's played, but you don't even want to play him at those positions. You want to teach him a completely new position that he's never played at all. So again, it's very confusing. I think as a bat, fits like a glove. It's this positional fit just is super super confusing. And I'm getting tired of the whole, because I feel like with every move the Mets make, especially over the past week, it's kind of like, okay, but what's next? Like none of these moves in their own right are anything spectacular. It's kind of like, all right, what's next? Okay, what's next? The Brandon Nimmo trade, I said it then. The move will only be as good as the moves that follow it. Edwin Diaz, okay. Edwin Diaz leaves. You got to refill the bullpen. We'll see how that plans out. Still got to do that. All right, Pete Alonso leaves. Okay, we got to do that. So I'm just getting tired of the whole, okay, but what's next? What's the plan? I still have a hard time seeing the plan. Because also, 2 more bullpen options came off the board in the past week with Robert Suarez and Tyler Rogers. Tyler Rogers, I thought probably was a good fit to come back. He gets a 3-year deal by the Blue Jays. He's not coming back. So now you're kind of left with a so-so free agent class of relievers.
I want to say one thing on Tyler Rogers really quickly. The idea of going from facing Trey Savage for 6 innings to then having to face Tyler Rogers should just
Yeah.
not be allowed. But
Yeah. But I don't know. It's really confusing. And at the end of the day, I hope Jorge Polanco is basically the DH. For all intents and purposes, I hope he is basically the everyday DH. I think that probably makes the most sense for the team, and I think it keeps options open for first base. So, anything else on Jorge Polanco, positional fit, whatever, before we kind of get into the overall plan?
I still think they need a first baseman just because I do
I
not
agree.
trust Jorge Polanco at first base.
I do not either.
It's not as easy as everyone makes it seem. Now, granted, if
Tell him
he goes
Wash.
there, what's that?
Tell him Wash.
Uh, it's not that easy. And if you want to just put him if he's an average to slightly below average defender at first, sure.
Yeah, I mean
But
the floor is super low because
yeah,
you're coming off Pete Alonso, who was the worst first base defender in all of baseball.
yeah.
So he just has to be better than the worst defender in all of baseball.
I will say, wasn't Pete very good with scoops?
Scoops, yes, that's what everyone keeps bringing up, and I agree. I think that is something that's important. So we'll see how that
I was gonna say
pans
because
out.
I would probably my argument for scoops versus like range with first baseman is
Yeah.
kind of like my argument with blocks versus framing for catchers,
Mhm.
where I feel like scoops are more important than range.
Right.
Well, I feel like framing is more important than blocking. Obviously, both are important, but I feel like we really do need some sort of analytic for scoops.
Yeah,
Er,
scoops above average.
You're just even if it's just scoop percentage, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just something that like how often they're actually because I feel like that's so much more important than range as a first
Mhm.
baseman. But that
Yeah,
I digress.
yeah, no, I do think that's important because I feel like if you watch a lot of Mets games, Francisco Lindor bounces a lot of throws to first, whether that's by design or not. I think that's something to keep in mind because there's a real chance that it wasn't by design, and that's just kind of how Francisco Lindor throws because he's never had the strongest arm. That was kind of like his one knock on defense. He's always been known for his range, not necessarily the arm, but
And you can make up
we'll
for
see how that
not
goes.
having the arm by if you are very fluid with your transition and
Right, which he is.
very quick with a transfer. But if you're like make crazy plays diving for a ball, get up quick, make a quick transfer, it's hard to be accurate consistently without a strong arm.
Right.
So again, Francisco Lindor also is one of the best defenders at shortstop of the last however long you want to say.
Yeah.
Consistently one of the best. So we'll see. I kind of think it's a little bit by design, just 'cause I feel like anytime you look at that type of player, it typically is,
Yeah.
especially if they don't have that strong of an arm. But we'll see. So
Yeah, for sure. But that's Jorge Polanco. Again, I like the fit. I just hope he's a DH. So before we get into the Mets plan, just going to go over some notes over the past week. So some of these things we kind of already figured, but we got it in writing. They're open to moving Mark Vientos, Luis Angel Acuna, Ronnie Mauricio. Again, kind of knew that already, but had it writing. It's kind of slowed down as of now, but past couple days, there's a lot of smoke between the Mets and the Padres. They're looking at a ton of players, notably Nick Pivetta, Ramon Laureano, Mason Miller, Jeremiah Estrada, and I think it's Adrian Morejon. Again, tons of players that fit the Mets. And I'm going to take a step back. A ton of players that fit the Mets, and then when it comes to prospects that the Mets could give up, fits the Padres. I think they line up pretty well for a trade. I don't think that's really a new take. But moving on to the plan.
I just want
And
to
the
say the
roster.
issue with the Padres, that many guys should not be available for trade.
Yeah.
I just AJ Preller's a psychopath. So go on.
I also think it's just a lot of money issues.
Don't sign the guys
with
then.
their ownership issues. I mean, look, Nick Pivetta was making like $1 million last year, and now because of the contract he signed, now he's making $20 million this year.
Don't sign Xander Bogaerts to an 11-year deal. I don't know.
Well, yeah,
Like that.
yeah,
That
that's the biggest one. But if we look at the roster as it stands right now, I do not think the starting rotation is the biggest issue anymore. It's still an issue. I still think they should add, but as it stands, I think the bullpen and the lineup are both steps above the rotation when it comes to filling it out. Currently in the bullpen, I think they desperately need to add somebody with velocity. As of right now, they have an average fastball velocity of 93.5, which is going over the Fangraphs projected bullpen. But that's not great. That's not even like average velocity. That's a tick below average, and I desperately need velocity in this bullpen. Mason Miller makes a ton of sense. I'm not so sure I would be willing to pay the price for Mason Miller. Obviously, it would probably be packaged with a Nick Pivetta, but I'm not sure I'm willing to meet whatever AJ Preller's, I'm sure, sky high demands with anything involving Mason Miller, because you do not trade a top 5 prospect in baseball for Mason Miller to then trade him in the offseason. So whatever he's asking, I'm sure it's going to be something insane.
it starts with McLean.
Yeah, basically.
Like that's the that's the start non-negotiable.
And I want nothing to do with that. Maybe that's a hot take, but I want nothing to do with that. I'm not willing to meet that price.
What if Mason Miller, they try him as a starter?
Then now we're talking.
Okay.
Maybe I will think about it. But it, like you say, it does start with McLean, and the issue is we need starters for next year. I don't want to trade Nolan McLean because maybe Mason Miller can be a starter.
Yeah.
So if that being said,
I just want to talk about that a little bit more. At the deadline last year, that was a talk of teams seeing if Miller could be a starter.
yeah,
So teams already think that he may be a starter. So I could see a team getting him with the intention of making him a starter. Will that go right? God only knows. That could go horribly wrong. But
right. Yeah, I mean, I also just don't think it happens this offseason. If that's the case.
Kind of like a Michael King, where he, like 2023 Michael King, where he started out as a reliever, slowly built back up into a starter, and then the next year
Right. He was really a starter. I think that's probably more of what we'd be looking at. And again, yes, the Mets need bullpen help, but I'm not ready for that conversation, I guess. I was also noted in an article by The Athletic that they are willing to use a young starter in a multi-inning bullpen role. For some reason, ever since he's been cleared as healthy and he should be ready for next season, Christian Scott has stayed in my gut as like they're gonna make him a multi-inning bullpen arm at least for next year. I really don't have anything to go off of that, but it just in my gut, it just seems like that might be a good fit because he is coming off Tommy John. They have Brandon Sproat, Jonathan Nolan McLean ahead of him probably. I think he can probably push up the fastball velocity a little bit. Maybe he sits 96. The sweeper is really good. The slide is really good. The split's really good. So I think that makes a ton of sense for him in a bullpen role. Maybe in a Michael King role, or that Mason Miller role you're just talking about. 2-3 innings at a time. I think that makes a ton of sense. But yeah, the bullpen is not in a great spot. Lineup. You need at least one outfielder. I keep shaking my table. I'm so sorry. You need at least one outfielder. At least, because I think it's okay to go into opening day with Carson Bench having an inside track to make the team. I'm fine with that. But you need like a at least upside of a stud with outfield. And I use that word very specifically. Huh?
Abreu/Duran.
Yeah. That we'll talk about it. But you need at least one outfielder. And my gut tells me they'd rather get a center fielder rather than a corner and then put Benj in a corner. That's kind of just what I'm gathering or from what I've read. Again, no sources. But that's kind of where I'm going with that. And then we kind of mentioned already, I do think you can use an actual first baseman. Polanco helps, but again, I hope he DHs more than anything. And then the starting rotation, kind of like I mentioned, it's not really the top of my list as of right now. I think this rotation is fine at best. Obviously, it can use another good pitcher, but I do think just the bullpen and the lineup should be a bigger area of concern than the starting rotation. And last but not least, they are also just waiting out the market for top free agents. They don't want to go long term. I think that's been pretty obvious. So they're kind of just waiting things out, which is annoying, but that seems to be their plan. All right. Justin, where should I start with this plan? Bullpen, lineup, starting rotation. Where you want to start?
Keep the momentum of. I feel like we talked a lot about the hitters. Might as well wrap it up.
Okay. All right. So when it comes to first base, I think there's a lot of ways they can go with this. Before they signed Jorge Polanco, I was ready to come in and say Wilson Contreras is going to be your first baseman. He still kind of makes sense. I still would be okay with a Wilson Contreras trade. I'm probably just a little less so now that you have Jorge Polanco.
I feel like it's too redundant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I feel like that's kind of like what it is now. But he still kind of makes sense. A more full-time first base. Polanco can kind of switch in and out of DH. Right-handed bat. Good defender at first base. The issue with Contreras, kind of like Polanco, is the injury concerns. Both of them haven't played a full season in God knows how long. In Contreras' case, he's just coming off of being a catcher, so that kind of explains that. But yeah, I think Wilson Contreras makes sense, but just less sense now that Jorge Polanco's here. I think the person that makes the most sense right now is Ryan O'Hearn. I think Ryan O'Hearn was a good fit for the Mets with Pete Alonso, and I think he's a better fit now without Pete Alonso. My only issue with Ryan O'Hearn is he's probably not going to take a 1-year deal. He probably is going to take a 2-year deal. which is fine, but I think it's obvious David Stearns wants an inside track for the prospects to make a impact one way or another. And signing Ryan O'Hearn to a 2-year deal, call it, is going to block a Ryan Clifford for the next 2 years or so. So I like Ryan O'Hearn. He's a good defender at first base. He's hit well. He's not super platoony. He can play against lefties. I also think with Ryan O'Hearn, you can kind of do like a mass platoon. Jorge Polanco could play third base against a tough lefty, and you can sit Brett Beatty. Jorge Polanco DHs against righties with Ryan O'Hearn at first base and Brett Beatty at third. I think you can kind of do like a big merry-go-round with guys like that. But the more I thought about it, the more I looked at it, we might already have our own Ryan O'Hearn in Jared Young. Mets fans probably aren't going to be super happy about that, but I think Jared Young did not get a ton of leeway, I guess, or like he didn't get a bunch of playing time. And when he did, it was very sporadic, going up and down from the minor leagues. But if we take a look what Jared Young did last year in AAA, it's a 303 average, a 402 on base. Excuse me, that's his overall minor league numbers. A 300 average, a 396 on base, a 560 slugging for 147 WRC plus, 17 home runs in 75 games. He walked at nearly 13% of the time, and he struck out less than 20% of the time. I think it would make a ton of sense to give Jared Young some what's the word?
Runway.
Runway. Thank you. Like what do planes go
You're
off of?
the
What's this? I do think it makes a ton of sense to give Jared Young some runway. He has better bat speed than Ryan O'Hearn. He barreled the ball up pretty well in his limited sample in the majors. Uh, the defense, I'm not completely sure of. He didn't get to play a ton of first base when he was up last year, so I'm not sure how the defense at first base would be. But again, the floor is in hell because Pete Alonso was one of the worst defenders at first base. So, while also, if you also go the Jared Young route, if you do not sign a Ryan O'Hearn, you also leave the door open for Ryan Clifford to make an impact in 2026. Ryan Clifford in the minors in 2025, average isn't pretty, but a 237 average, a 356 on base, a 470 slug, a 137 WRC plus. He reached AAA at just 21 years old. He walks almost 15% of the time. The strikeout rate's a little inflated. He hit almost 30 home runs in 140 games. He hit 29 home runs in 140 games. I really like Ryan Clifford. I think he is a huge reason why they were more comfortable letting Pete Alonso walk. I think they really like Ryan Clifford. The other thing with Clifford is he can kind of play the outfield in a pinch. They've tried him in the corners. He has a strong arm. It's more so just of a range issue. But I would be okay if you went with Jared Young to start the season, and this is probably where I lose a lot of fans. I would be okay with letting Jared Young start the season as kind of like the first baseman, while allowing Ryan Clifford to get more seasoning in AAA and maybe have a chance to impact the team later on. Now, yes, that is asking a lot, and that's banking on a lot. But given what this team looks like right now, I think they need to bank on upside. There's not a lot of ways they can add a proven, stud without getting uncomfortable, which they obviously just don't want to do.
I was gonna say that's the big
Yeah.
thing where, and my dad made fun of me because he listened to the podcast and when he was driving, came home and he said, "You say roster allocation a lot." But it is true in the sense of when you have a resource allocation, you have to allocate these resources. You can't make everything perfect, especially the position where the Mets in, where I it looks like a complete in between a retool and a rebuild.
Yeah, it's
Where
not a rebuild.
but it's
It's
a
above a
lot more than a
rebuild.
retool. It's a lot more
Right.
than a retool. So you almost have to bank on a couple of guys just figuring it out for whatever reason.
Yeah,
So you got to pick your spots. This
I
may be the
agree.
one they have to pick. So,
Yeah, I do think first base is kind of like the. All right, we'll see what happens. Again, that's not.
if only we could have had a top first baseman.
Yeah,
Oh
I
well.
know. Yeah, basically. But I'm sure that's not what a lot of fans want to hear, but I do think that's a consolation that they're willing to make.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of fans are going to be happy about Jared Young being the
Uh-uh.
answer
Uh-uh.
to Pete or the successor to Pete Alonso.
Definitely not. And I do want to bring up Kazuma Akamoto because I still like the player. I think he does fit, but again, he would block Ryan Clifford, and it's David Stern screams to me that he wants his prospects to get a chance to impact the major league team, and Akamoto's probably getting a multi-year deal, maybe 4 years, so that is without a doubt going to block a Ryan Clifford. So that was first base. DH we already got. For all intents and purposes, I think Jorge Polanco is your DH. Center field, kind of like what you said, you need to bank on guys just kind of figuring it out. There is one center fielder that if he pans out, it looks like a steal. If he doesn't, it looks really bad. And we are once again talking about Luis Robert Jr. I still think it makes all the sense in the world to do this trade.
There's
Said
no
at
in
the trade
between.
deadline.
There's no median outcome for Lubob.
No, he's either not a 4-5 win player or he is a platoon
DFA'd
outfielder.
in June.
Yeah. Again, it's $20 million. It, from the reports that we've gotten, it sounds like the prospect return, the White Sox want to be higher, so the Mets are asking for money in return. Offload some salary and we'll give you a higher prospect return. I think makes sense. That's fine. But I think Luis Robert just makes a ton of sense. It sounds like it's kind of the Mets and the Phillies, but then the Phillies just signed Adolis Garcia, so I'm not sure if Robert really fits the Phillies
How'd you
anymore.
say his name?
Adolis?
I could have sworn it was Adolis.
Maybe. I don't know. It might be.
That tripped me up. Sorry, go on.
Maybe I'm wrong. Garcia. So, look, Robert and I said this at the trade deadline. At the very least, besides, again, the injury risk, you're getting speed, you're getting good base running, you're getting nearly elite defense, and at the very least, he can platoon against lefties.
My one other than the injury risk, my other thing that I'd be a little bit concerned about is a lot of people were talking like with the White Sox. Obviously, the White Sox were a lot worse than what the Mets are going to be, but I don't think a lot of people see the Mets as a playoff team this year.
Mhm.
And a lot of people kind of question how much he wanted to play. He's kind of just like not really enjoying it anymore because they were losing
Yeah.
so much, wasn't having fun, questioning like, oh, does he have the drive, all that. How will that look getting traded to a team that's not a playoff contender starting the year? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it could also be one of those things where you're upgrading from the bottom of the barrel,
Yeah,
right?
which is fair. But
No
also,
matter what, it's an improvement. And with the Mets, he has something to prove. Like, if I, Luis Robert, show out, I can make this team a playoff team. Whether that's
mm,
something he is, interested in, or kind of like if that's something that fuels him, you know, I don't know. But personally, if I'm in a team and I know if I play to my potential, I can be a huge X factor for this team. I don't know. That motivates me.
That's fair. I'm just saying it's something to note because also how much of it could be I don't want to say letdown, but almost wanting to be traded to a better team. You know what I mean? We're like, oh, I
Yeah.
finally got out of Chicago to still not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but at the very least, and this is such a low fucking bar, you fight for the playoffs. You know what I
I
mean? Like
100%, I
White
definitely
Sox,
agree.
not fucking do
You're
anything.
not,
The Mets, at the very least, will be fighting.
which is fair. Just something to keep an eye out on.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I feel like the Mets want to add a center fielder rather than a corner. And out of all of these center field options, I think that he makes the most sense.
He is a Stearns type player too. I feel.
Yeah,
You
like
know what I mean?
speed, defense, and then if it clicks, power.
Yeah.
The bat speed is still elite. So again, he almost makes too much sense.
Mm.
Another guy I do want to mention because his name has been brought up a few times is Brenton Doyle. Could be interesting. The Rockies are apparently listening on him. At the very least, you're getting elite center field defense, and we've seen him go 2020 just a year prior. He had a really bad year in 2025, but the potential obviously is there, and I would that would be something I'd consider. With a 97 WRC plus, Brenton Doyle was a 3.6 WAR player in 2024. 2025 was just a disaster in every facet of the game, but that would be something I'd be interested in.
My only thing with Doyle is that if you are gonna trade for him, I'd want them to trade for him as soon as humanly possible.
Oh, so he can
Because
get into the system.
not even that, but also just get out of course, get out of the elevation, have as
That's
much
true.
time as you can to adapt to just not having to deal with it. Because that is
Not
something
that.
that I feel like you see that if guys get traded in the middle of the season to a team outside of course, they have that struggling. But
Yeah.
a lot of the guys, if they have that full off season away from it, or even sometimes it takes a full year, they end up kind of, I don't want to say regressing to the mean, but their home road splits almost, their numbers are probably around the same, but the home road splits kind of just
Even out.
even
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
It's not going to be as stark.
Yeah.
So, again, and when it comes to free agency, there's not really a center fielder I'm interested in all. Cody Bellinger is not a center fielder, and Cody Bellinger is not someone I'm interested, obviously.
Oh, you're back to no more Cody Bellinger?
I'm okay with Cody Bellinger at like a 3-4 year deal as a corner outfielder.
5.
But again, no.
Not
Like
even.
hard 4.
What if it's 5, 25 years, so 125?
Hard 4.
Interesting. Okay.
Hard 4. It might, and even 4 I'm kind of uneasy about.
Close your eyes, turn away, push the contract to the middle of the table type of 4.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly how I'm looking at it. Uh and then just to kind of fill out the rest of the lineup, Jeff McNeil, I think, is traded. I think Jeff McNeil is the most traded person that has not been traded yet. Jorge Polanco just kind of murks that water even more, and I just don't think there's enough playing time to go around for Jeff McNeil. What that trade looks like, I'm not really sure of.
I think you could make it
But
work, but
I really don't want to play him in the outfield.
I
Like
agree with you. But I'm
90% of
just
the
saying,
time.
yeah.
Look, if Jeff McNeil is on this team next year, I think that's fine.
You see, half my mind just forgot about Marcus Simeon, so never mind.
Yeah, okay.
That's more what because I was like, oh,
Right.
but you could platoon at second base a little bit with Polanco. Never mind.
Yeah.
I completely forgot about Marcus Simeon, but
It's outfield or not,
yeah,
or like just kind of bench roll. And I don't want a $16 million bench piece. Additionally, kind of in the same breath of the Jorge Polanco stuff, I think Mark Vientos is also gone. He also just hired Scott Boras. Scott Boras is going to want his guy to play every day, and Mark Vientos is not going to get that with the Mets.
next year is his first RB, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's He's
gone.
going into arbitration. He wants him to play at least 140 games.
Yep, which is a shame. I really thought we had something after 2024, but unfortunately, it's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. It sucks. I really wish he kind of panned out, but I do think he's out.
And for better or for worse, Scott Boras has shown a tendency that if his guy wants to get traded, he will kind of grease those wheels.
Yeah.
So,
So that might make something a little easier. All right. So that is the lineup. Oh, well, you know what? Let me backtrack because you mentioned it earlier. Jarren Duran, Willer Abreu. I do think that also makes a ton of sense. I do think before I write an article that was saying that, maybe the Red Sox will trade Jarren Duran to the Royals for like a Cole Reagans. I had this feeling in my gut that Jarren Duran was just going to be a Met. I don't know why. I kind of just feel like that's going to happen. But if the Red Sox are looking for a Cole Reagans in return for Jarren Duran, maybe not 1-for-1. I'm not exactly sure if the Mets have anything to meet that. But I think Jarren Duran does make a ton of sense as a center fielder, not as a corner. Add some much needed speed. Obviously, had a down year defensively last year, but has shown to be really good to elite defensively. So I do think Jarren Duran makes a ton of sense. And the last guy I'll touch on is,
and I just want to say on Duran too, I feel like there was buzz like today and yesterday about the market kind of heating up for him.
yes, it definitely
So
seemed to be.
that's
So
that. I was trying to find the tweet. I couldn't find the exact tweet, but kind of just like reading the tea leaves, it seemed like the
yeah,
market's really starting to come back up on him.
move.
So
The last guy I'll touch on is Kyle Tucker. I don't think Kyle Tucker is in play unless his market absolutely crashes. If he's getting 11 years, the Mets are not around. If he's getting 6 years, for whatever reason, then I think that's when we start to have a conversation. But as of right now, I don't see Kyle Tucker as a fit. All right, you know what? And just for the sake of it, because this is kind of how I had things laid out, let's talk about the starting rotation. And when it comes to the starting rotation, I think the Padres trade makes all the sense in the world because it will solve two problems. So what I envision with the Padres, again, I don't see Mason Miller happening, nor do I kind of want Mason Miller to happen. But I do think Nick Pivetta makes a ton of sense. He is going to make $20 million next year. The Padres are looking for salary relief. I will expect some regression from Nick Pivetta, but I do think he can be easily a 3-5, a 3-5 to high 3 pitcher that will make 30 starts and pitch 180 innings, which I think is something the Mets desperately need. So I think Nick Pivetta makes a ton of sense. He does have opt-outs after every single year of his contract. So I would be treating Nick Pivetta as a rental because if things go well, he is opting out. If he does not opt out, then something went incredibly wrong. So I would be treating Nick Pivetta as trading for a rental. Also in that package, Jeremiah Estrada makes a ton of sense for the Mets to try to get back. If it's not Mason Miller, I think Estrada is probably the next best thing. Believe he has 4 years of control left. He has kind of really taken off in the past 2 years. He sits 98, which, like I said, Mets desperately need velo in the bullpen. Solves that. This past year, a 3.45 ERA in 73 innings, 108 strikeouts, a 116 WHIP. Year before that, a 2.95 ERA in 61 innings, 94 strikeouts. He's really good. I think he makes a ton of sense for the back end of that bullpen. I don't think the Mets are looking for another closer type guy. I think they're just looking for a back end guy. in one way or another. So that would be Nick Pivetta, Jeremiah Estrada going back to the Mets. I think Mark Vientos makes a ton of sense for the Padres. They don't really have an answer at first base. I mean, I think they have Gavin Sheets, which is their projected first baseman. But, they need lineup help. And I think Mark Vientos can get 600 plate appearances in San Diego. Their DH is currently Tirso Ornelas, who got 16 plate appearances last year and had a negative 14 WRC plus. So I think they can improve there. I think, Gavin Sheets, Mark Vientos, first base DH platoon makes sense for the Padres. And again, I just think he doesn't really fit the Mets anymore. Also going back would be Brandon Sproat. There's been a lot of talk of kind of just Brandon Sproat, Jonah Tong, who would you rather give up type of thing. And I am more than willing to trade Brandon Sproat. I still think he's a very good pitcher. I would love to have him as depth this year. But I think Sproat makes a ton more sense to trade than Tong. When it comes to prospects, I'd rather keep the guy with, the elite outlier stuff, which is what Tong has. Sproat is kind of just a, jack of all trades, master of none. He has some good stuff, but he's more of a back end guy, while Tong is really the highest ceiling with, that front line starter type, while also accepting the fact that Tong also has probably the lowest floor of all these Mets prospects. So I would do Mark Vientos, Brandon Sproat, and then a lower level pitcher like a Jack Wenninger and Jonathan Santucci, a double A, close to triple A type starter. I'm not sure if that gets it done. I don't know how you feel about that with Vientos, Sproat, and then Wenninger, Santucci, which is probably like a 15 to 10
I
top
think
prospect.
the issue is Sproat instead of Tong, just knowing the type of GM AJ Preller is.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of he is a big gambler. He will gamble on traits and upside more than anything else. So I
Yeah.
think that he sees Tong and he sees Sproats, and he sees kind of like what you're saying, where Sproat has more the median outcome, while
Mm-hmm.
Tong can be a much higher ceiling. I think
Yeah.
you'd rather the ceiling, and that'd kind of be my only thing. That I think if you're gonna deal with Preller, you kind of got to give up Tong. So
That's fair. I mean, the other thing with Sproat is I feel like he fits into the rotation immediately. You can make the argument Tong needs more time in AAA in the minor leagues. So that, because again, if you're taking the rotation already looks bad with Nick Pivetta. If you take out Nick Pivetta, I do not know what they're doing.
yeah,
So maybe you have to add a David Peterson. Vientos, Peterson, Sproat, and another lower level prospect for Pivetta and Estrada. Maybe that makes more sense. Maybe they want to take a shot on Kodai Senga. He doesn't. The money is kind of even, sorta, on a year basis. Senga's making 15. Pavetta's going to make 20. So maybe they want to do that. But I think there's ways to work around to get Nick Pivetta and Jeremiah Estrada. But overall, where do you stand on the Sproat and Tong argument? Like, not necessarily for this trade, but just in general.
I think it works out perfectly in the sense of Sproat's more ready, and you want Tong to get more development.
Mm.
So I honestly just think it works out perfectly.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you like Sproat's ready. He's more like a back end guy. He'll eat innings, and then Tong is a guy you just really want to kind of work on more stuff. So
Yeah.
I know I just said, but it is perfect in that sense of like it's almost like an easy out for David Stearns, but my only other counterpoint would be there may be pressure to bring up Tong just so the fans don't burn down City Field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But
Yeah. But yeah, in my mind, in my mind it's McLean and Benj untouchable, right? Tong is like just a step below that. I'm trading Tong in a Scoobble trade. I'm trading Tong in, I don't know, call it like Mackenzie Gore or something like that. There's very few players I'm trading Tong for,
I was gonna say Freddie,
personally.
but he's a rental.
Yeah. The only rental I'm trading Tong for is probably Skubal.
Okay.
It's not going to be Peralta. It's not going to be,
Sandy.
who else is there though?
He's
Yeah,
not a rental,
basically. Yeah, probably not either.
but Eduardo Cabrera.
I would trade Tong for Cabrera.
He is a rental. I believe he's a rental. Joe Ryan.
I think he has 2 years.
Like,
But
I'll check that right now.
even then, I don't think I would do Tong or Ryan.
He has 2 more years of arbitration.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So.
don't think I would do Tong for Ryan. But everyone else is kind of up for grabs. Jet Williams, Brandon Sproat.
Brian Bayo.
No.
In the trade package to also get an outfielder. Of Duran /
Bayo and Duran. Maybe?
You got to think about it, though. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
That you got to think about
no.
it.
I think Bayo is just more of a back end guy when, he's another David Peterson. He's another Clay Holmes. Like, the Mets need a top number 3 or better starter.
My only thing is that he has 1, 2, 3, 4 years and then a club option.
Yeah. The contract is super manageable. That's fair.
This year, $6 million. Next year, 8.5. But then it kind of ticks up to 16, 19, and then 21 for a club option.
Yeah. So, but that's kind of the starting pitching, and then that's the Padre talk. I will also mention I'm not interested in Ramon Laureano at all. He's a bad defender. Had a career year. The underlying stuff looks good, but he's probably not going to replicate that. And again, he is a negative defender. So I don't think that really fits.
But he made that one play when he was on the Athletics against the Angels.
Yeah, of course.
Still
He's
has a
taking
hose of an arm.
steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last but not least, the last move in this plan is signing another bullpen arm. Sir Anthony Dominguez is probably at the top of my list for a guy to bring in. Again, velocity. He is, between him and Hunter Harvey, who I also like, they have some of the best velocity of what's left out there. Pete Fairbanks, I'd be okay with as well. But Sir Anthony Dominguez is my top guy. I would be interested in Luke Weaver.
I was about
Not
to say
as
Weaver.
not as much velocity, but I still think he's really good. And then, like I mentioned, Hunter Harvey would also be interesting, as well as Shelby Miller.
It's gonna be Weaver because it's a former Yankee.
Former Yankee. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's a Met.
Yeah.
He's a Met until proven otherwise.
And then you're gonna have so much fun with the Weaver versus Williams debate. It's really gonna pan out exactly.
It's really
going
gonna
to
be the same thing. That'd be kind of funny.
No, then Clay Holmes is gonna go into the bullpen. Then you're gonna have Clay Holmes versus Luke Weaver.
Clay Holmes versus Luke Weaver versus Devin Williams. Who's the closer?
Have fun with that one.
You know what? I think we're gonna make Devin Williams a starter and put Clay Holmes back in the bullpen.
And then after you figure out Luke Weaver's better, you put Clay Holmes as a rotation. Then you put Devin Williams back into the bullpen, and then you got the Luke Weaver versus Devin Williams again.
Yes, I think that makes sense. That checks out. All right. So that's what I got. Again, it's really tough to kind of see where this team goes. That, again, I said it last episode, but that's the one exciting thing about the offseason is that there's a lot of places the Mets can go for this. There's a lot of different avenues. And obviously, by the Jorge Polanco signing, I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. So maybe they do trade for Wilson Contreras. Maybe they do trade for Luis Robert. Maybe they somehow get Byron Buxton. I don't see it, but maybe. So I'll wrap it up like this. Given this plan, this is kind of how things shake out. Justin, what do you think is more likely? Do you think they sign Ryan O'Hearn just for the sake of the argument, or do you think they go the Jared Young with an inside track for Ryan Clifford?
I just think at one point you also have to defend a lot of the young guys, and you almost need to get I don't want to say a shield, but I, I'm just throwing his name out there, Paul Goldschmidt, in the sense of
Yeah.
people are gonna be like, "Oh, Paul Goldschmidt's not playing well," whatever it may be, so that all the blame isn't on the young guys, because that's just how we are as fans. No matter how fair it is, how it's not, because that's my concern with the rotation too. That if you
Yeah.
rely solely on the young guys to be like, "Oh, the young guys they suck, they're not good," what are they doing? So I think they gotta sign someone for if no reason, just to take pressure off the young guys.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And unfortunately, maybe Paul Goldschmidt does kind of sort of make sense.
He was a
Especially if you,
Yankee.
yeah, if you go the Jared Young route, maybe he does make sense.
But that is all
Maybe.
contingent upon actually using him at what he's good at.
Yes, which is specifically and only and solely for the fact of hitting left-handed
He
pitching.
is damn near elite at it.
Yes.
But do not let him sniff a right-handed hitter. And I think, like you're
Exactly.
saying, a Jared Young, Paul Goldschmidt platoon does make sense.
Yeah, and again, with Jared Young in there, he give an outside track for Clifford.
Clifford's a
If
lefty too, right? Yeah.
Clifford is also a lefty, so no, for the argument, let me do this.
And also, it's Paul Goldschmidt's not a bad guy to have in that locker room, in the
Yeah,
clubhouse.
if the
So,
clubhouse is as bad as things may seem, maybe that's not such a terrible idea either.
so
So, but for the argument, the lineup will be something like this: Lindor, Soto, Polanco. Your choice of Ryan O'Hearn, Jared Young, Ryan Clifford, Paul Goldschmidt. Your choice of first baseman.
Josh Bell
Luis
just did
Robert.
sign. Just wasn't gonna probably be a thing,
He
but
was he was someone I was considering for DH
mm,
before Jorge Polanco, but that ship has sailed. Then you got Luis Robert, Brett Beatty, Francisco Alvarez, Carson Benj, and Marcus Simeon. It's not pretty. It's not, but it's probably solid. I think Lindor, Soto, Polanco, Ryan O'Hearn. If Luis Robert pans out, great. Brett Beatty is kind of what we saw last year, fantastic. If Francisco Alvarez can stay healthy for the love of God and everything holy, then we look better. Carson Benj plays to his potential, looks fine, and then Marcus Simeon is there. So your bench will then look like Luis Torrens, Luis Angel Acuna, Tyrone Taylor, and probably some sort of veteran to fill out that last spot. Maybe it's a Paul Goldschmidt. Your rotation: Noel McLean, Nick Pivetta, Sean Manaea, David Peterson, Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga. I think it makes sense, especially if Kodai Senga is on the team. 6-man rotation. I've been saying it for how many years now? I think it makes sense. Everybody pitches better on 5 days rest on the 6th day. Just do it already. You're delaying the inevitable. With Jonathan Christian Scott as depth. Your bullpen: Devin Williams, Jeremiah Estrada, Brooks Raley, AJ Minter, Sir Anthony Dominguez, a prospect like Dylan Ross, and Huascar Brazoban. And like I mentioned, maybe they use Christian Scott in that back end multi-inning role. So, if we look at the projected WAR, it is only steamer, so there's a lot of change in this, but what went out, what can come in. Brandon Nimmo was projected a 2.6 WAR. Edwin Diaz is projected 1.5. Pete Alonso's at around 2.4, 2.5. Simeon is a clean 3. Devin Williams is 1.1. For the argument, we'll say they signed Ryan O'Hearn, which is about 2 WAR, and Jorge Polanco is projected around a 1.7, and Carson Benj is around a 1.0 with some, playing time stuff, so we don't really know how that will pan out. That is a surplus of 2.3 WAR. So that's an addition of 2.3 WAR. Whether that helps, who knows? But from a WAR perspective, this team probably improves, given what went out. So that's my plan. That's kind of how it shakes out. It's a lot of moving parts, for sure. A lot of moving parts. Uh, and we'll see. I think it's exciting, but also frustrating with the many avenues this team can take to improve. But we'll see what they do, because Jorge Polanco wasn't really on anyone's radar, and here he is. So, Justin, you got any closing thoughts on the offseason for the Mets? My plan, your plan, the plan.
The more and more I think about it, the more and more I like Paul Goldschmidt as a fit for the Mets. But
Yeah, I mean, it kind of sort of does make sense
it makes
a
a
little
lot
bit.
of sense.
Only if they go like the Jared Young, Ryan Clifford route.
Yeah.
If they sign Ryan O'Hearn, I don't think so. But
Yeah.
that's probably not a terrible fit. Probably not a terrible fit. So I guess that will do it for the Mets' new offseason plan. Let us know what you think in the comments. What would you do differently? Was there something I mentioned that you liked a lot? Or was there something I mentioned that you hate? Let us know. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you. Leave us a like, leave us a comment. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, leave us a review. It really helps us out. And as always, follow all of our social media accounts at the Triboro Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter. We post breaking news, all that good stuff. You get our first reactions there for the most part before we post these episodes. So thank you so much again for watching, and we'll see you next time whenever news there is to talk about. See you then.